Hello, everybody. We're welcoming back Ted Savransky, professional sports bettor and NFL analyst and expert. We're going to talk about the Seattle Seahawks going to Minnesota to take on the Vikings this weekend. I just noticed, Ted, the line is now at -5. Yesterday it was at 5.5. I'm really anxious to get your breakdown and see what you think and who's going to come out on top in this ball game with Seattle and Minnesota.
Well, let me start with a caveat, because when these two teams played the first week of December, I believe it was week 13 of the season, I had a huge bet on Minnesota. Loved the Vikings in that game. As big a bet as I've made all year in the NFL. Everything I was reading in the papers, in the local papers about the Vikings, were talking about they were coming together in an effort to beat an opponent that was a quality foe, something they hadn't been able to do all year. Seattle at the time, I'm not going to say they were reeling. They were coming off that win over the Bengals, but their pass defense had been struggling. They were just one game over 500. The running game wasn't working for the Seahawks. I thought everything set up perfectly for Minnesota. I made a huge wager on the Vikings, and boy, I wasn't just wrong. I was as wrong as I was wrong about any game I was played all year. I mean, dead wrong in that contest. Minnesota could not move the football against the Seahawks defense. Teddy Bridgewater was unable to connect at all with his receivers downfield. The Vikings finished the game, I think, with about 122 yards of total offense. They gained 2.6 yards per play.
Wow.
9 first downs. They didn't do anything. Meanwhile, Seattle was able to throw at will against that Vikings secondary. Russell Wilson continuing at that stage what was an epic run that he ended up going on in December. I think the Seahawks went 9 of 13 on third down. They converted a fourth down as well. The Vikings just couldn't get them off the field. So when I'm that wrong about a game and there's a rematch a month later, this is not the type of contest where I'm going to unload on. Not even close. My initial handicap between these two teams was dead wrong. That being said, that game, the point spread was pick 'em. By kickoff, Seattle was favored by a point or two, but midweek it was pick 'em. Now we're talking about the Seahawks laying 5. So obviously market perceptions have changed since that initial game. Even though the Vikings, since that loss, they've gone 4-0 against the spread, and they've been competitive in defeat at Arizona, and of course last week at Lambeau where they won the game straight up. A Minnesota team that couldn't hang with big boys early in the season, they've shown the ability to do that over the course of the last month.
Yeah. Well, Ted, I also looked at this game heavily and thought also back several weeks ago that the Vikings were in a good spot because, my hat is off to Mike Zimmer. He is really, really coaching this team up, and he is a defensive guru. And they're just a different team than we've seen in years past. And they've been flying under the radar most of the year. So I also thought that was a good spot. I didn't put anything on it, but just looking at it, I thought they would get it done. And it seemed at that point is when Seattle really started to turn the engines on after that. And I know they had that one loss against the Rams, but in any time a team meets each other again, in a short time fashion, it can be dangerous. The reason I love Seattle, and I loved it at 5.5, I'll be honest, if it was 7.5, I would like it. I like it because of Pete Carroll. He really, really has brought to the light, in my opinion, that, hey, guys, we made the biggest mistake on the last down last year where we could have had another Super Bowl victory. And I believe their blood is churning from that. I think that's what's motivated them. And, of course, Russell Wilson, his touchdown to interception ratio in these last 6 games is phenomenal. He is back to just absolutely being on top of his game. Defense is stepping up. I just think everything falls into play. And what really takes me to that point and confirms it for me is when I saw Adrian Peterson get hurt last week. I've had lower back pain, and I saw him go down, and he tried to come back in. He had one run, and he damn near lost the ball. It was almost a lost fumble. So there's just no way that I think he's going to be 100%. And against this defense, I don't see it happening. I am all over Seattle. I'm going to take the other side as far as I'm going heavy. And again, hey, who knows in this business? I may lose. They may get their asses kicked outright. But I just feel momentum going in and coaching experience at this level is going to bode well to cover this line for the Seahawks, Ted. So that's where I'm going to put it. And I had another question before we get through here. I was kicking back last night, had a couple cold beers, thought about our conversation. fruition with that national championship game, the little bet that we had that started out as a burger. Now it might be a flight to Vegas or Costa Rica. I would really like to see that bet come to fruition, whether I win or lose. I think we ought to really think serious about making that a serious bet.
As far as I'm concerned, when I say, yeah, okay, that's a bet, whether it's a handshake, whether it's a yes, that's a wager in my world. But
Okay.
let's get back to Seattle, Minnesota for a minute, because I think there are 2 points that we have to talk about here. One is Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah.
And when you compare Russell Wilson, who has a proven playoff performer, and you look at what he's done over the back half of the season, where he was every bit as good as Cam Newton and Carson Palmer, the two guys getting touted for MVP this year. I would absolutely put Russell on that list. And if you think about what the Seahawks season would have been without him, I wouldn't even want to imagine it. But when you compare Wilson with Bridgewater, and Bridgewater has not gotten a whole lot better his second year. The Vikings have very little downfield passing game. Bridgewater's success is all on dinks and dunks. Mm-hmm. And then you throw in this other factor. You look at the weather forecast for Minneapolis on Sunday. We're talking about game time temperatures near zero, wind chills in the minus 20s. Mm. Teddy Bridgewater is from Miami. He went to school at Louisville. Did you see him in the cold last week at Lambeau?
Yeah, looked
guy couldn't hit anybody. I mean, he really was missed a number of open receivers in that game. And I'm not convinced this is going to be the type of contest where Bridgewater is going to be able to succeed. That being said, when we're talking about a very cold weather game, running the football becomes paramount. Seattle, Marshawn Lynch has been back in practice here. This week, I should say, don't know for sure if he's going to be able to go. But the bottom line for the Seahawks, if he doesn't go, Fitz Toussaint and his 24 career carries at the running back position, that has to be a concern. The Marshawn Lynch injury is something worth watching as the week progresses. If he's able to play, I think it's a big boost. Obviously, it's a big boost for the Seahawks. And I'm not a running back guy. I'm a guy that tends to think that running backs are tremendously overvalued in the betting markets. Not for this game. Huge difference for the Seahawks if Lynch can play.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Another thing that I like also, kind of springboarding off of that, Russell Wilson almost gives you that extra running back, weapon, and his legs are capable enough to just confuse that defense enough to where I think he's going to take off a little bit more in this game. And again, that weather I think favors Seattle big time, because you nailed it on the head with Bridgewater. Louisville and Miami, he did look very uncomfortable at Lambeau, and that wasn't. I mean, the conditions last week were getting rough, but he is getting ready to step in for the second week in a row in this weather, and I saw some flaws in him, because I totally agree. I haven't seen a lot of growth in 2 years. I wasn't a big fan of his coming out of Louisville. I thought his size was going to hinder him, and I didn't see the downhill game. I did not see a really, really consistent passing game. So if if Peterson's not going to be able to be full strength and they have to put the pressure on Teddy's shoulders, I think that is not at all going to help them. I think they will cave in that. So I'll put my pick out there also. It is Seattle. I like that line no matter what it does the rest of the time. I believe that if Marshawn Lynch does not play, I think someone's going to step up and take advantage, and I think the defense is just going to be on point. But I said it once, I'll say it again. I think the Pete Carroll factor gets the W here. And so you're on the same page with me. A bet is a bet. We're going to follow through. So we've got something big on that national championship game. Ted, thanks so much for being with us. You heard it out there, viewers. Teddy likes Seattle as well, and that might be the ticket that's going to cash with no doubt. Ted, have a great day. Look forward to talking to you again real soon.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you.